Hello, amazing humans around the world. I'm leecamp. This is Dangerous Ideas. Thank you for being here, for having a moral core and caring enough to lend your voice to fighting against the injustice that is going on around the world, to fighting against this genocide we're seeing against Gaza right now, to fighting against the harm and destruction perpetrated by the U.S. empire. And yes, I consider Israel part of the U.S. empire. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into how it seems that Israel is quite likely using Western mercenary troops, paid troops from the West, including the United States, in their ongoing genocide in Gaza. I'm going to get into how Cornel West believes that Joe Biden will quite likely drop out rather than run for re-election. And I'm going to get into the news you might have heard about Venezuela and Guyana and the truth and where the United States falls in that ongoing propaganda, ongoing struggle, whatever you want to call it. But all of that and much more is coming your way right now. Please make sure and click share, click subscribe, click follow. Let me just make sure all the other good, exciting streams are going. Hello, everybody, again, and thanks for being here. You make this show possible. To give you a little update, and this is coming, sometimes I like to bring you the mainstream media to show that even they are reporting these things. This is not just coming from independent media, but NBC News is saying close to 20,000 Palestinians have been killed, with 70% of them, 70% of them being women and children, according to the territory's health officials, which Gaza Health Ministry has been proven right again and again and again by international observers. They are not shown to exaggerate these numbers. So these are accurate numbers, or as accurate as they can be in a time of endless bombs raining down, more than enough to add up to 3 Hiroshima atomic bombs, damaging upwards of 40% of all buildings in Gaza. And NBC News also reporting that the vast majority of Gaza's 2.2 million people are displaced, and an estimated half face starvation, according to human rights advocates and aid groups. And that is, part and parcel to what I've been saying on recent live streams, that Israel is looking to other weapons other than just bombs to continue their ethnic cleansing. And 2 of the biggest of those is disease and starvation. They are hoping that those 2 things, those 2 weapons, which they fully have in their arsenal because they can cut off all food going into Gaza, all clean water going into Gaza. And they're hoping those 2 weapons do more than even their bombs have, contribute more to the ethnic cleansing that they are perpetrating across Gaza right now. And so again, that's even NBC News is reporting this stuff. But I'm going to jump right into our main topic here about these Western mercenaries. So this is being reported by the Orinoco Tribune. They do great work often on Latin America, but they will do report on other aspects of U.S. empire as well. Israeli regime turning to Western mercenary groups to back genocide in Gaza. Pedro Diaz Flores, a notorious Spanish mercenary, revealed that the Israeli regime is recruiting private military companies, which is a nice term for mercenaries, to ensure it's a nice term for people who will be paid to kill other humans that they have nothing against and don't care anything about. If they were getting paid by the other side, then they'd be killing the other side. And these are human beings. Most of them, I'd say the vast majority of them, are veterans, largely from U.S. wars, but other wars as well, who have they have so much PTSD and their mind is so warped that they think if you just pay them, they'll murder anyone. They just want to be in the murder game and make some money doing it. So these are about as screwed up individuals as you can get. And they seem to be working, at least, at no point in this article does it try and give any numbers to these mercenary troops, how many are over there, but could be a small amount, could be larger. But The Israeli regime is recruiting private military companies to achieve its interests in the besieged territory. He revealed that many mercenary groups have joined Israel's army, which pays them, quote, very well. Quote, so I came for the economy, for the money. They pay very well, they offer good equipment, and the work is calm. It's 3,900 euros, $4,000 a week. Complimentary missions aside, he means you get more for complimentary missions. Or yeah, I think that's what he meant. And anyway, so the reason he says the work has been calm is because it seems like right now they're mostly using these paid gunmen, these paid terrorists to work at checkpoints and things like that. So I guess he means they seem to be less often the people that are sent into the tunnels in the more active fighting. Flores, who fought alongside neo-Nazis in Ukraine, and you make great friends when you're a paid mercenary like neo-Nazis. You find yourself in the bunkers, and these are good guys, these Nazis. Flores, who fought alongside neo-Nazis in Ukraine, spoke of his group's assistance to Israeli forces. We only provide security support to arms convoys or the troops of the Israeli armed forces that are in the Gaza Strip. Quote, we are in charge of the security of the checkpoints and access control on the borders of Gaza and Jordan. There are many PMCs here, and they share the work. Traditionally, they have guarded border terminals between Eilat and Aqaba. According to the images posted by a leading American private military contractor, Forward Observations Group, FOG, and you'll notice that, like, many of these, you haven't even heard of them. I mean, I'd never heard of FOG. I guess if you study this stuff, you might have heard of them. But the fact that these people are operating, the people, Americans, are being paid to go and murder people around the world, and it's not even talked about. Like, the mainstream media doesn't even cover, like, oh, yeah, the FOG guys. The only time they'll cover it is when it's truly becomes some sort of outlandish episode, like with the massacre that Blackwater was responsible for. Basically, it got to a point that it had to be reported on, had to be covered a little bit by your mainstream media. But for the most part, you don't even hear about these things. These are paid Americans and certain other countries as well. I'm sure there's Canadians and some others, but to go murder people and as if it's legal. The American PMCs seem to be active in the occupied Palestinian territories, aiding the Israeli regime on their social media accounts. So this is the part that's posted publicly. So this is not just one man's account of what's going on over there. On their social media accounts, FOG posted numerous images and stories showing its recruits in Palestine, surrounded by a large cache of weapons and sporting combat gear. Wearing the American flag on their uniforms, the mercenaries' social media accounts show they are stationed alongside the Gaza border in the occupied territories. In a YouTube video posted back in January, the group revealed its presence on the front lines of the Ukraine war, assisting the Ukrainian forces in their war against Russian forces. And all of this just buttresses the argument that these are U.S. imperial wars. Israel's genocide against Gaza is a U.S. imperial war. Israel is funded partially by the United States. Israel is dropping U.S. bombs on Gaza. Israel is using American Special Forces help with their genocide in Gaza. And of course, you know how involved the U.S. is in Ukraine and the proxy war there. So these are U.S. imperial wars. You can't just act like these are, oh no, that's Russia fighting Ukraine. It doesn't have to do with the that's Israel fighting Hamas. It's nothing to do with the bullshit. These are U.S. imperial wars. The founder of FOG is a U.S. mercenary and ex-U.S. paratrooper, Derek Bales. Apart from unconventional forces, the U.S. has deployed more than 15,000 military troops to the occupied territories since the regime launched its fresh aggression against Palestinians on October 7th. Deployments disclosed by the Pentagon back in October also include 2 U.S. aircraft carriers and their associated escort ships in addition to the repositioning of an amphibious task force made up of about 4,000 U.S. Marines and sailors. Some of what the U.S. is doing over there, the Pentagon, et cetera, have admitted to in terms of helping fly drone coverage over Gaza. I believe they're referring to surveillance drones. And but there are special forces in Israel that we don't really know what they're doing or how they're involved. And of course, Biden asked to no longer report on what munitions are being sent to Israel, basically to keep them even more secretive than munitions sent to Ukraine. The munitions, the weapons sent to Ukraine are publicly declared for the most part, whereas what's being sent to what's being sent to Israel, we largely don't know. Wall Street Journal reported that 15,000 bombs, missiles, etc., have been were recently sent by the United States to Israel since October 7th. But we don't really know a lot of the details of how much is being sent over there because Biden has asked to keep it all secret. But as you can see, this involves the U.S. It involves paid mercenaries. This is not just an Israel versus Hamas genocide. It is blood on the American empire's hands, as if we needed more, to add with the 37 other types of blood that happen to be on the U.S. empire's hands. But you're seeing more coverage of this in the mainstream media. I think that because the world has woken up to the horror show that is going on there right now, with 20,000 murdered, with more innocent civilians murdered in Israel in Gaza over 2 months by Israel, more innocent civilians murdered in 2 months than have been murdered in the entire Ukraine proxy war. More innocent children, obviously innocent, but more children murdered and journalists murdered than in the entirety of the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan over 20 years. It's just unbelievable what Israel is willing to do right now, fitting and I brought you this, and if you want to go back and watch the live stream, you can, but the dictionary definition of genocide that is posted on the Holocaust Memorial Fund website that has UN backing, the dictionary definition of genocide, Israel ticks every single box, and all you have to do is do one of the things on the list, and you're committing genocide. Israel ticks every one of them. So they're committing genocide about 13 times over. But as I was saying, the mainstream media is getting more and more pressured into covering some of this, at least to a certain degree, and which, is testament to you guys. It's testament to you, all of you who care out there and have been reposting stuff. And yeah, it gets suppressed, but it reaches a tipping point where these media outlets, no matter how controlled they are, they start to look ridiculous for not covering this. So here is The Guardian, which has largely been captured since around 2014. But, and this is an opinion piece. This is one of the ways they get away with real coverage in the mainstream media, is they call them opinion pieces and then they go, oh, we don't stand by that. But still, it's better than nothing. It's an opinion piece by Nesreen Malik in The Guardian. It says, what does it mean to erase a people, which of course is the definition of ethnic cleansing. What does it mean to erase a people, a nation, culture, identity? In Gaza, we are beginning to find out. And then the subheading says, artists killed, journalists silenced and killed, libraries and mosques destroyed. What will be left to bind the survivors together? Which is not just like an accident. That's the goal. That's the mission of Israel, is to destroy the cultural memory of Gazans so that there's not much to bind the people together. And when they are forced to flee in a diaspora from Gaza into Egypt and other places, that Israel's hoping there will be nothing to bind them together. They're murdering academics, journalists, people who are the leaders of the community, no matter how peaceful they may be. So the Guardian article says the corollary of the question, what makes a people, is what erases one. And what is unfolding in Gaza has made the question an urgent one, because alongside the horrors of death and displacement, something else is happening, something existential, rarely acknowledged, and potentially irreversible. It looks like this. Earlier this month, Gaza's oldest mosque was destroyed by Israeli airstrikes. The Omari Mosque was originally a 5th century Byzantine church and was an iconic landmark of Gaza. 44,000 square feet of history, architecture, and cultural heritage. 5th century. It was from the 5th century. And what amazes me, whenever, well, I should get to the point that they obliterated the thing. They completely blew it up. And when I read about like Israel blowing up things that are from the 5th century or just thousands of years old, it amazes me on the level that it's like somehow, despite the fact that humans have been horrific in the past, and despite the crusades and the various other just insane wars that have gone on at various times, this is actually somehow worse. Now they're obliterating things that have lasted 1,500 years or 2,000 years. We managed to not destroy these things for 2,000 years, and here is Israel bombing these cultural landmarks. Then she continues, Saint Porphyrius Church, the oldest in Gaza, also dating back to the 5th century and believed to be the 3rd oldest church in the world. The 3rd oldest in the world was damaged in another strike in October. It was sheltering displaced people, among them members of the oldest Christian community in the world, one that dates back to the 1st century. So far, more than 100 heritage sites in Gaza have been damaged and leveled. And then she also gets into the murder of academics and professors, and this is what it looks like to try and wipe out an entire culture, to try and wipe out an entire people. And of course, I've been bringing to you many of the protests against this genocide, which continue around this country. It really does give you, you can take some heart in how much people are fighting back, even if it has not been enough so far. But, interrupting the politicians' dinners and their meetings and their campaign events where they have donors all sitting at nice tables, eating nice food, and whatever you can do to make these people's lives miserable until they actually speak out against this. Of course, not only are they not speaking out against it, they're actually voting to continue the genocide in the House 412-1, claiming that anti-Israel is the same as anti-Semitism, which is bullshit. And I'm saying that as a Jew, as one of those dirty Jews. It is not at all. You can be anti-Israel. You can be anti-Israeli policies. In fact, there are people within Israel who are anti-Israeli policies. What? How could that be? How could there be anyone in Israel who disagrees with their government? I can't even fathom such a thing. But yeah, and I was at a protest this past weekend. We went with many others to block off and did succeed in shutting it down for a while. The Amazon warehouse, the Amazon fulfillment center in Baltimore, which I find it interesting. It's called a fulfillment center because I don't think any of the workers inside Amazon are finding fulfillment. So it'd be weird to work in an Amazon fulfillment center. But so you might be wondering, why block off? Why shut down and block an Amazon warehouse in Baltimore? What the hell does Amazon have to do with Israel? Well, actually, via Project Nimbus, Amazon and Google work to help Israel, help the IDF surveil Palestinians at every inch of their lives, which is also more of the evidence that Israel knew this was going to happen, and knew it was happening, and even the New York Times has reported that. But yeah, Amazon and Google are heavily connected to the IDF, work with the IDF via these projects. And that is the connection between Amazon and the genocide that is going on right now. But to move to further how the mainstream media is being forced into actually covering this genocide in a variety of ways, even if it is not enough, even if they'll spend 14 segments on how Trump farted today and then one segment on the genocide, still, it is something. And this is a segment, actually, I'm gonna show you the end of this segment. A segment actually from CNN. And this apparently was the first I think it was the first U.S. mainstream media at all, but it was definitely the first CNN correspondent who was able to get into Gaza because they're not being allowed in, and when they are allowed in, they're generally, clinging on to the bootstraps of an IDF soldier who tells them what they're allowed to look at. So this is reporter Clarissa Ward. And again, I'm not going to defend her entire life. I don't know what she's done. I'm assuming if she's a reporter at CNN, that she probably has manufactured consent for wars all around the world. So this does not mean she's a wonderful person. I have no idea. I luckily do not watch CNN that much. But she did do this report, and they apparently got in with a hospital or a medic crew, so they were not embedded with the IDF, which I think was probably made a big difference. And anyway, listen to the end of what she's saying here, and you can look for this clip. It's online, and you can watch the rest of it. And she goes into a hospital. They feel the impact of a bomb as bombs are landing right next to the hospital because the IDF is bombing hospitals and bombing next to hospitals constantly. But also she goes and interviews children that are, barely surviving or in full body casts, etc. And, except for not saying the word genocide, largely does not pull any punches, which is good to see.
Now, the death toll in Gaza as a result of Israel's frenzied bombardment currently hovers.
Except for not saying the word. Apparently, I have volume on something else, so please hold.
Now, the death toll in Gaza as a result of Israel's frenzied
bombardment
currently hovers.
Okay. That should do it. Yeah, that was a hell of a CNN report where she's blabbering over some idiot that sounds like me. Okay. Let's try this again.
Our brief glimpse from a window onto hell is ending as a new chapter in this ugly conflict unfolds.
Now, the death toll in Gaza as a result of Israel's frenzied bombardment currently hovers at roughly 18,000. If you do the math, extrapolating as the UN says that 2/3 of the casualties roughly are civilians, that is about 11,800 civilians who have been killed in just over 2 months. And to give you a comparison, in the first year of the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, according to an independent research organization, some 7,700 civilians were killed by U.S. forces. In 20 years in Afghanistan, according to independent research groups, some 12,000 civilians were killed. So in just 2 months, you're now approaching 12,000 civilians, and that's the same amount who were killed in 20 years during the U.S.'s war in Afghanistan. So this is truly staggering and unprecedented.
And as you can see, calling it staggering, calling it unprecedented, of course, there are ways that she is slightly still pulling the punches that you would expect in mainstream media. For example, she says the number killed in Israel's frenzied bombing. Now, I like that you added the word frenzied. I really appreciate that. But she did not say the number murdered by Israel, which would be to give the active voice to what Israel is doing, which is always very important. But that is the common way that your mainstream media covers these things, is to give the passive voice. But again, I don't actually want to be that critical, because this is far better than most of what you're getting from mainstream media. And the fact that she was actually able to get into Gaza. And, as the person who posted this noted, this is fascinating because it is mainstream media. This does not mean there are no journalists in Gaza. There are many independent journalists, and many of them have been murdered, 90 to be precise, more than the entire Vietnam War, the entire genocide the U.S. tried to perpetrate against the Vietnamese, and more than throughout the entire Iraq War, more than throughout the entire World War II, apparently. There are already more journalists killed in Gaza because Israel is aiming for journalists. And as I pointed out today on my TikTok channel, which is, if you guys want to look that up, is leecamp redacted. And I do post shorter videos about what is going on. But as I pointed out there, Israel in terms of like murdering journalists, Israel has admitted to a lot of these things. So a lot of people want to get into a debate with you about, well, Israel's fighting Hamas. Israel's just, listen, people are going to get harmed as they fight Hamas. And they wanted to have this debate with you. But the truth is, various Israeli officials, various cabinet members, various ministers within the government have admitted, as well as governmental think tanks, have admitted to so many of these war crimes. Here's a short list of what Israeli officials, some of them being Netanyahu himself, have admitted to. The first one is Netanyahu. They've admitted that they want to wipe Gaza off the map, which is definition of genocide. They have Netanyahu held up a map in front of the UN days before October 7th with Gaza and the West Bank removed. They have admitted that they are not concerned about killing civilians or children. Because they've said no one is innocent in Gaza, meaning we can murder everyone. Now, of course, that's also saying no one is innocent in Gaza is saying that a baby is not innocent in Gaza. This is a genocidal talking points. This is a genocidal ideology. This is how someone perpetrating a genocide talks, to say no one is innocent in Gaza. They have admitted they have cut off Gaza's clean water, which of course is a war crime. They've admitted that they're trying to starve Gazans to death, which is a war crime. They've admitted to intentionally bombing hospitals. Sure, they claim there's tunnels underneath. Even if there are tunnels underneath, you're not allowed to bomb hospitals. Still a war crime, still a genocide. They've admitted that they're targeting journalists. I mentioned that. They have admitted that they knew about the October 7th attack was coming. They might not have known the date. It's unclear yet, but even the New York Times has reported that they knew it was coming. I believe, and many others have said, that it's quite likely they allowed a large portion of it to happen because it has allowed them to get what they wanted, which is ethnic cleansing throughout Gaza. They have admitted that they're covering up as evidence of what went down on October 7th because they have said publicly that they are shredding and burying the vehicles, which are the cars that are burned and shot up with bullet holes and blood and hair samples and everything else. They're basically getting rid of, I don't know how many cars it is, I assume hundreds, but shredding them and burying them in an undisclosed location. They have admitted to their plan of ethnically cleansing Gaza because they've said that that all Gazans should move to Egypt or other countries, which is ethnically cleansing that area. They have admitted to genocidal ideology, which I mentioned before, but to give more examples, various ministers have said publicly that Gazans and Palestinians are not human, that they are, insects, that that none of them are innocent, and those type of talking points are the talking points of genocide. It justifies murdering an entire people. They have admitted that, the former president of Israel has admitted that fair reporting of what is going on there favors Palestinians. Meaning, if you actually know what is happening there, then you will side with Palestinians. He said that publicly. Now, he was trying to say, therefore, we should all be doing propaganda to help Israel, but he apparently did not realize that he was also stating, if you get the truth, you will side with Palestinians. And I think we should all want the truth. I don't know about you. I think we should all be looking for the truth. But okay, that is some of what's going right in terms of mainstream media. And again, this is few and far between. I'm not going to act like Fox News is doing legitimate coverage of Gaza or MSNBC or whatever. But at least we have some reporting here and there, including Guardian and CNN at times. But so that's some good news. Here is some bad. Here is the atrocious news. I like to weigh the atrocious with the. I have to, because of just how funny it is, and it's like 10 seconds long. How funny it is. I have to play this clip of RFK Jr., which has been going viral, and many of you know he is the most like genocidal Zionist you could ever hear from for some odd reason. Some say it's, because he does have, he is getting a lot of funding from large, meaning wealthy Zionists. Some say he's just out of his mind. I don't know. But And anyway, I'll play the clip and then I'll call. I've played clips before of how crazy he is on this particular issue, while he may be right on certain other issues. Anyway, I'm sorry it's so small, but
talk about solutions for the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are arguably the most pampered people by international aid organizations.
Are you kidding me?
No,
even before this war, 78% of people in Gaza said they had, not enough food to eat.
Right. And why is that? Why are you blaming Israel?
In part, it's Hamas, and in part, it's the fact that Israel imposed a blockade and talked about putting them on a diet.
If your neighbor, first of all, Israel has no obligation. Israel built 3,000 hot houses and gave you talk.
He doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about. First of all, it's not partially Hamas. She says it's partially Hamas. It's not partially Hamas. It's Israel decides. So most of you know this part, but I'll say it again anyway. Gaza has no open connection to the outside world. It had initially 5 entrance exits, 5 ports of entry that they could use. All but 2 before October 7th had been cut off, and now essentially all are cut off. But of those places that someone in Gaza could get in or out, they all needed Israeli approval, and it was very rare to get it. And everything that goes into Gaza, food, medicine, everything, it needs Israeli approval. And Israel had said years ago, had announced they were putting Gaza on a diet and actually only allowing enough food into Gaza so that it was actually less than the number of calories per person to survive. So they were trying to make people semi-starved was their goal. And they stated that publicly, that part publicly. Also, the Gaza can't get clean water because Israel decides what water is allowed into Gaza. It is a prison. It is an open-air prison. And here is RFK Jr. trying to claim they're the most coddled people on earth. I mean, even exempting, before October 7th, even exempting the genocide they're now going through, just before October 7th, could you imagine walking up to a prison door and saying, "You're the most coddled people in the world"? It's utterly insane. And there's only 2 options of why he would say these things. One is he genuinely believes them. Okay. He genuinely believes these things. And if that's the case, then it erases anything else he may say that you agree with. I've covered a few clips of his that I agreed with and said I don't think you'd hear from other politicians, such as criticisms of factory farming. But it delegitimizes everything else he says, because if he believes this garbage that he's spewing, then it shows he'll believe anything. He apparently will just fall for, I don't know, any garbage that's handed to him. So that's option 1. Option 2 is that he knows he's lying, he knows it's bullshit, and he's just doing it because either he's getting funded or he thinks he needs to do this to win the election. But the problem is, if it's option 2, it still means you cannot trust anything else he's saying, because if someone will just stand for whatever is easy to, you'll give me money? Great. Okay, I'll say that then. And I know that's what we believe most of our politicians are, but the reason people liked him is they viewed him as different. They were like, oh, this guy is different than the others. This is insanely the same. It's pro-U.S. empire. It's pro-genocide. It's pro-imperial war. It's, pro the settler colonialism. It's pro-weapons contractors. It's pro-propaganda. It is everything that people claimed he was the opposite of. So, you get like, and that was one sentence of his, and you may go, oh yeah, but maybe that was just one sentence. I've played other longer clips. Everything he believes about Palestinians is utterly false and is utterly bullshit. So, it really does say a lot about who he is and what he stands for. And, I often say that if we want to create real change in this world, then we should spend about 5%, maybe less, of our time talking and thinking about the presidential election that is, a year from now. And I say that a lot, which is why I spend far less time than almost all other independent outlets that cover politics and what's going on in the world. But I will say there are 3 candidates right now that I can list. I'm sure there's a couple more, but 3 candidates right now that say free Palestine and that actually will show up to free Palestine events. Cornel West, Claudia De La Cruz, and Jill Stein all have that stance. So don't act like you don't have anyone that supports free Palestine and is opposed to genocide. Okay, speaking of Cornel West, he actually got some mainstream media coverage a little bit. It's classic mainstream media that they won't cover the independent or third-party candidates unless they say something about the other candidates. But this is from The Guardian and The Hill and some others. Cornel West said that Biden likely will not run. He believes he will have an LBJ moment. I'd love for Biden to have an LGBT moment. If he just came out, he's like, look, I am 80-something years old. I'm out of my mind. And also, these the last few years, I figure I should finally have some fun. Me and Tony Blinken got it on. Yeah, we got it on last night. Yeah. By the way, that's one of the nastiest thoughts I've ever put out into everybody's minds. Joe Biden will have an LBJ moment and decide not to run for re-election. And by the way, I'm not saying it's nasty because it's gay. Gay can definitely be beautiful. I'm saying it's nasty because it's Biden and Tony Blinken. And decide not to run for re-election next year. The left-wing academic and independent presidential candidate Cornel West has predicted. Oh, by the way, before I keep going, folks, in a few minutes, I will be moving over to just rumble.com/leecamp, free to watch there, as well as my locals page. I'll tell you again when I'm going to cut off the other streams, but that'll be in a few minutes. And another quick note, tomorrow I will have on Abby Martin, my good friend Abby Martin, and hopefully you're a fan of hers as well. So don't miss tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. That is when I do these on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, so let's get back to this, though. Cornel West predicted he would not ultimately be running for president. Already the oldest president ever sworn in. Biden is 81 and would be 86 at the end of his second term. Could you imagine an 86-year-old president? That is insanity. Joe Biden already has trouble walking up 3 stairs. He already said in one day, he said that the October 7th was 65 years ago. He said that his father survived the Hamas attack and lived in a kibbutz. That's one day. Can you imagine what, because very rarely is he speaking without the teleprompter. Can you imagine the shit he's saying when he's behind closed doors that we don't see? When they're trying to quote unquote advise him, can you imagine the shit he's saying? All right, already the oldest, he'd be 86 at the end of the second term. In polling, clear majorities say he's too old. Why would they say such a thing? That is rude. By the way, Joe Biden was in office and support during segregation and supported it. That's how old he is. Cornel West told Politico he might end up running against a B team of younger Democrats, including Gavin Newsom. I think Gavin Newsom is the one they're really grooming to take over when Biden drops out. Governor of California, and Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan, because Biden was, quote, running out of gas. At 70, West is 7 years younger than the most likely Republican candidate, the former president, 91-time criminal indictee and adjudicated rapist, Donald Trump. Now, here's the thing. I get this is neoliberal Guardian getting a slam in on Donald Trump, but also that's true what they just said. I didn't know it was 91. He's been indicted 91 times, and he's been judged to be a rapist, and he's also got 26 accusations of rape or sexual assault against him. But It is amazing how many independent journalists or independent talking heads, they think that you can't criticize the Democrats without just like ignoring the fact that Trump is a horror show. No, you can be against both. You can know that they are both corporate criminals. Like they are inverted. They are what this country, this world, this country especially vomits up in an inverted totalitarian consumerist system where we've got a completely inverted way of living. We have an inverted value system. And when you have an inverted value system, because it is all based on money, all based on profit, not based on humanity, not based on care, not based on love or justice. When you have an inverted system, it vomits up people like Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And they are the same bucket of vomits. Same bucket of vomits. Do you see? You don't have to defend Trump if you're anti-Biden. You can realize they are both a shit show. And I'm sorry to mix my vomit and my shit, but I can't say for certain that the stew I was just talking about did not also have some turds in it. I can't. It vomits up and shits up. There's vomit and okay, I'll stop. West is 7 years younger than the most likely Republican candidate, the former president. I read that part. But anyway, Cornel West saying that he thinks Biden will not ultimately become the presidential candidate. And I find this interesting because I think it's probably likely that I'd say, 60, 70% chance that Biden won't ultimately be on the ticket. But why would they? The question is, why would the Democratic Party, which of course just wants to extend their ownership of the society, why do they want to wait so long to announce that? And I think it's clear that they're hoping that they basically get close to election time, August, September, somewhere in there, maybe the DNC convention in July or August. And that's when it really happens, so that there's not as much time. There's time for people to get excited. And not that they should be, but we know how how informed average Americans are. It's time for enough people to get excited about, Gavin Newsom or something new, without enough time for them to really start to sour on the fact that, oh, he's just the same shit as all the others. Oh, good to know. Anyway, good to see Cornell get some mainstream coverage. Doesn't happen that often because we know the mainstream media's entire job is to just support the ruling elite, to keep them in power. And the ruling elite are not the third parties, are not the independents, generally speaking. So that they cannot give him the media coverage. If you get media coverage, you are whether it's negative or positive, far more likely to win the presidency with media coverage, even negative coverage. I often point out that Donald Trump won the election largely because he got 16 times as much coverage. These were the final numbers after the election. They went back and looked at the coverage. 16 times as much coverage as Bernie Sanders when Bernie Sanders was in the race. Donald Trump did. Donald Trump got 10 times as much coverage as Hillary Clinton while she was in the race. So the mainstream media could not help but endlessly and tirelessly cover Donald Trump, even if it was negative, but it didn't matter. They were talking about him. And the fact that much of the mainstream media was saying negative things about Trump just helped him, because the people that like Trump hate CNN anyway. So they were like, it really is a feeding frenzy for ratings. Also, CNN's ratings apparently dropped 40% the moment Trump left office. So they're just chasing money, and the money is in covering Donald Trump. It's also good to cover up all the U.S. empire's crimes. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent and forgetting to go over to justrumble.com/leecamp. By the way, when we get over there, I'm going to cover how the U.S. is using what's going on in Guyana to try and bring about a coup in Venezuela, to try and bring down Venezuela. They are trying to do, well, I'll get into that. I was just about to say it. See, I get excited about these topics. I can't stop talking. So anybody who wants to follow that and learn that, as well as other stories, come over to rumble.com/leecamp. That's rumble.com/leecamp. Please join me over there. It is free to watch over there. Also, if you're on Locals, my Locals page, the community there if you're part of the community there, it will continue as is there as well. So no need to leave at Locals or Rumble. And let me just do that now. And also, anybody who wants to support this show, I know it's end of year giving time. So if you want to see this show continue, I have not really reached my goals. I try not to press it too much because I don't like doing it. But this show is still not sustainable. It's getting closer. But if you want to become a member, go to leecamp.net. That will forward you to my Locals page. Or you can go to this Linktree link that's on this front on the page here. Linktree.com/leecamp. That'll show you all my stuff, but it will also show you how to join my community. And you can become a member for a whopping gut-wrenching $6 a month. And you can help keep this show going. You can